I'd like to extend my personal welcome and thanks to those of you who've joined us today. We hope to make this informative and actionable for you, and would ask that you please provide us any feedback at the end of this that would help us improve the quality of what we're presenting and the information that we're presenting. As Allison indicated, I'm the author of Creating Insanely Great Customers, and also the producer of the webinar and training series that's a companion to that guide, and also the manager of a growing alliance of vendors and consultants who are contributing to the creation and delivery of this methodology. I'm also, as Allison indicated, a founder and principal within Spice Catalyst. Spice Catalyst is an agile business acceleration agency that's dedicated to helping organizations apply these principles and practices within their own organization. And we do that through training, consulting, and transformation services. A bit of my background is that I got my start in this industry at Apple. I had the opportunity and the challenge to work with Steve Jobs. Since then, have been really a part of Silicon Valley in a number of different capacities, all the way from product management to marketing to business development to sales. And I've done that in organizations like Apple, Adobe, Silicon Graphics, and a number of startups. So if you haven't figured it out already, I'm a technology junkie. I really love this stuff. Part of the motivation behind creating the Insanely Great Customers methodology was that I looked up one day as a product manager and VP of business development for a company and realized that I was both excited, intrigued, and somewhat intimidated by a lot of the changes in the go-to-market methodology and technology that were now available to us. And I really wanted to find a way to harness that to accelerate customer value. So I did what I always do in situations like that. I reached out to people who were working out at the leading edge of that and started to try to pull together something that really made a lot of sense and became very clear about how we could deliver insanely great value to customers. So kind of practice some of the things we learned early on at Apple. That's a quick background. Before we get into the major part of the presentation and just talk a little bit about what an insanely great customer is. And I think each of you in your hearts know this intimately. These are the customers we all want. They're the customers that represent serious new revenue opportunities for us. They represent the ability to open up new markets for us, and they also represent partners that will help us innovate our offerings so that we can extend even greater value to those customers that help us do that and others in the marketplace. Essentially, they're the customers we'd all want to have. In today's webinar, we're going to introduce you to the Creating Insanely Great Customer Framework, discuss how you can apply that to accelerate your revenue, and why building relationships with these insanely great customers is going to be so critical in the market going forward, and to do that based on mutual continual learning and innovation between you and your customers. The topics that we'll talk through today include discussing a perfect storm that's reshaping the way business-to-business companies go to market and engage customers. We'll discuss the process of creating an insanely great customer, and we'll talk about the customer journey and how that becomes a perfect framework that really allows us to start to prioritize, initiate, and measure actions that create value for customers, and a lot more. And then we'll discuss the 7 steps that you have to go through to kind of harness this storm and bring to life a Creating Insanely Great Customer strategy within your own company. There are a number of resources that are companions to this webinar. We'll discuss those at the end of the webinar, and you also receive information about those in an email, so I won't talk about those right now. All right, let's talk about the perfect storm. Every one of us is facing challenges as we go to market in incorporating all of the new buyer behavior that's going on out there, all the new tools and technologies and ways to use those that are coming about. I won't go through each one of these because we'll cover them a little more in depth in the latter part of the webinar. But I think you're all experiencing how do we, get our arms around this. And most of us are focused on keeping those balls up in the air as individual things that we know we have to deal with, we know we have to incorporate, and we have to bring to life within our companies, and in some cases, help our customers do that as well. And while that's important in work that we have to do, What's even more important is to have a focus for that that's really going to drive incremental value into the marketplace. And one of the things that we see happening out there underneath this storm, there's a bigger current, there's a bigger change that's starting to take place. And that's the change that's driving the dialogue and the pace of innovation in our markets. Because we can bring together content that facilitates a dialogue and pushes value further up in our funnel and best practices further up in our marketing funnels. Because we've got social media that allows us to reach out, interact, and facilitate and gather insight and information from our customers. We now can start to see very quickly what's desirable in the market. What is the market looking for? What's possible given the technology mashups that we're starting to see happen at the guerrilla level? Then what's viable? What is going to be sustainable and worthwhile to the market going forward? And with today's capabilities, today's insights, and today's technology, that the pace and the dialogue around that process of innovation is moving ever faster. That's where we believe the focal point needs to be in market engagement strategies going forward. The customers we all want, the insanely great customers, aren't just asking anymore to be a part of that innovation dialogue. They're demanding it. And the reason they're demanding it is because they too realize that if they're not out there innovating and finding ways to create incremental value continually for their customers, they'll be left behind in the marketplace. And so they're holding up their hands and say, we're going to be a part of that dialogue. Those customers want innovation not just for innovation's sake or cool new technology sake, but they want it because they're looking for something that's going to help them deliver breakthrough business value for their customers and for themselves. The Creating Insanely Great Customer methodology is an agile marketing strategy or methodology that helps harness that storm and focus it. By doing so, helps you accelerate your revenue and profits by creating breakthrough customer value and by engaging in this mutual continual learning and innovation dialogue with customers. At its core, Creating Insanely Great Customers is really about creating relationships. It sets the stage for collaborative learning and innovation that helps you become a better provider for your customers. It helps reset, and it's one that resets the bar for value creation in the marketplace. And through the dialogue, through discussion, through the immersion with customers, helps to bring new vision, new insight, new resources together as you each tap into your various ecosystems that delivers new value to the marketplace and to your customers. That's set in the context of a marketplace where insanely great has become the new good enough. So we're no longer happy with the kludgy old tools we used to get as enterprise customers. We now expect them to look and feel not a whole lot different from what we get on our mobile devices. We also expect that our vendors are going to be more knowledgeable about us, deliver more value today than they ever did, and do that in a more effective and more personal way than they ever did. We have to set our goals with the understanding that this insanely great has become the new good enough. As I talked about earlier, creating insanely great customers is a process. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without investment and commitment. One of the reasons we love the customer journey is because it really gives us a framework, stage-by-stage framework, to make those decisions, to make those investments, and to gauge the value that we're creating in incremental ways so that we can continue to refine and improve our ability to deliver value at every stage of the customer's relationship with us. And I think the other point I want to make here is we have to remember that this is their journey. We have to remember that the customer is having their own journey that's made up of not only what we're putting in front of them, but what our competitors are putting in front of them. This is their journey, and we have to do the work to be invited into it and to maintain a position of delivering value if we're going to continue it. And each one of these stages today has become increasingly competed for because of the technology and capability we have available to us. So there's really an opportunity to differentiate and create value through working through each of these stages. We're not the only ones that believe this customer journey is a critical part of the marketing strategy. Forrester has said, they've got their CMO imperative for 2013, and that is understanding the buyer's journey and then making sure that you're embedding personas of the people that you're providing goods or services to in your marketing plans. And we firmly believe in that and have incorporated that into our thinking here. I want to start by telling a story about the customer journey. A long time ago, I used to work for a very young and brash guy by the name of Steve Jobs. I was the Apple II product manager. And at the time, we had just announced or just released a new product, and we were struggling with a lot of out-of-the-box failures. Basically, UPS guys and the postal guys were just throwing the cartons, and then the chips would come dislodged, and then we'd get unhappy customers. So we spent 3 months re-engineering this package to reduce those out-of-the-box failures, and had succeeded. We had almost no failures. And I was sitting in my cubicle one day, and I was watching Steve walk down the aisle, and he was carrying my shipping box that we just got out under his arm. And I thought, boy, at last I'm going to get a compliment from Steve. Well, he stormed into my office, and he threw the box down on my desk. And he looked at me and he said, "Your out-of-the-box experience sucks." I had no clue what he was talking about, but I'd worked with Steve long enough to know that I should ask. So I said, "Steve, can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that?" He reached into his pocket and he pulled out this beautiful, simple, elegant jewelry box and put it on my desk. And he said, "Mike, when someone receives our products, it should feel to them like they're unveiling a rare and precious gift." He said, "That's the experience I want you to create for our customers." And that was my first indoctrination, if you will, into really thinking about the overall customer experience and the customer journey, and understanding that what we were creating through what we were doing was an emotional attachment or reaction to our products, and that this was a key part of it. So the customer journey is really everything that your prospects and your customers experience as they engage with companies and their products, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the other thing that the customer journey is a very powerful framework that allows us to accelerate customer value and marketing and sales effectiveness, because it gives us a framework to prioritize how we're approaching customers, how we're investing in different parts of that customer engagement, and then the ability to validate stage by stage whether we're creating the value and the desired result that we wanted or not. And then it also gives us the ability to refine that and go back and re-innovate what we're doing. The other thing it provides with today's technology is listing posts. It provides us data and insight and the opportunity to engage in dialogue with the community out there that we're trying to create value for in ways we never could before. So it also provides a framework for continual learning and innovation. Combined, that provides a framework that allows us to transform the customer value we deliver. It allows us to go from a company that does really good work out there to insanely great work if we use it appropriately. Now I want to discuss how that customer journey framework also helps us accelerate revenue. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're ultimately going to be measured on. We've all heard these statistics. Almost 60% of the work to research and make decisions around business-to-business products happen before those customers ever reach out and touch our salespeople. If there was a good argument to accelerate value in the front end of the funnel through great content and information and insight, this is it. Doing so equals real revenue. This is also a really good argument that says it's really critical that by the time these customers get to your salespeople know a tremendous amount about them, and they're not just rehashing an old brochure that the customer's already been through. They're actually helping that customer move forward in their understanding and their decision process. The next one, again, you've probably all seen the research out there, but nurturing campaigns can do a lot if they're well managed and well delivered to accelerate sales-ready leads and reduce the cost of creating those. And the result of that is increased sales opportunities, pretty dramatic increases in sales opportunities. That's real revenue. And the customer journey makes a great framework for doing that. And then the other thing that we're seeing is organizations that have really taken to heart this full life cycle marketing, where they're engaging their customers throughout their life cycle, not only at the front end of the funnel, but the back end, as customers, what they're seeing there is 3 times the customer retention and almost 30 times the lifetime value of a customer. Again, that's real revenue. So now the question is, how do we get the t-shirt? We've all been through all the programs and initiatives and product launches and those kind of things. How do you get the t-shirt for taming this storm and bringing real revenue and real value to your company and to your customers? That's the next part of what we're going to discuss now. So not surprisingly, it really starts with the customer. It requires building an immersive understanding and a relationship with those customers that's deeper and better informed and more current and more forward thinking than your competitors are doing. And not only understanding your customers, but understanding their customers. And then being able to translate that knowledge and that insight into something that is actionable and distributed throughout the company. So personas make a great vehicle by which to do that. And what we believe is that those personas need to be continually refreshed because of the rate of change that's going on with products, competitors, markets, buyer behaviors, and so on. Really building that immersive understanding and articulating that throughout the organization in a way that's actionable for everyone from product management to product marketing to sales to the marketing teams to the executives that are going to be engaging these guys is a pretty critical part of this work. A quick story here. In my last company, we were a SaaS-based organization that provided data visualization and analysis software for geographically based data. Our largest clients were the insurance community as well as law enforcement. Insurance community used that information to determine where their risks, their greatest risk profiles were. In law enforcement, a lot of crime analysis and operational analysis. But I was working with some absolute rock star designers and developers, guys really kind of leading the industry in their thinking, but I was still facing the classic challenge of communicating to them the needs and the requirements of our customers in a way that they could really take action against it. And so I asked the chief of police for Ogden, Utah, which was standing up one of the first real-time crime analysis centers and was one of our major customers, if they would be willing to host our team out there for our quarterly planning meeting. And they did. We got invited into the chief staff meeting, into gang squad meetings, narcotic squads meetings. We got to go on drive-alongs, got to go watch them take down and bust some drug houses, and had a day's worth of live fire training out at one of the most advanced SWAT training facilities in the world. The beauty was that when we went home, the conversation shifted dramatically because that entire team now had a really deep, visceral understanding of what these guys did for a living, what information was critical to them, and how they needed to use it in a way they never had before. Just a big, dramatic change. So while we've got a lot of tools at our disposal that allow us to gather market analytics and research tools out there and the ability to track who's doing what on our website when, there's nothing that we think is more critical than being out there and diving deeply into these customer environments and getting that real visceral understanding of who they are and what creates value for them. The other thing that we believe about personas is that you can't just have a look into the past about what customer behavior has been and then base your personas on those. Because the markets are trending so fast, because buyer behavior is changing so fast, and it's being impacted not only by what's going on in and around the world of your products, but it's also being driven by things like consumer products and products in totally different industries that your customers are exposed to. The other thing that we also believe is that as you develop personas to go to marketplace with, that they have to be based on the future trends as well for them to hold value for you. Next thing that's important is vision. It takes courage to have a real vision that's going to make a difference in the marketplace. It means you have to dare to understand, see, and act in the world differently than the world of competitors around you. And that's what your insanely great customers are going to be looking for. Someone who's going to bring them a new and unique approach that can create value for them in ways that other people can't. You have to be able to look at what's going on in the marketplace today and vision it in a completely different way. You have to be able to transport what your customers are experiencing from things like this, which we're all familiar with and are certainly, kind of effective from a vendor and an inventory management standpoint, to experiences like this that really make customers want to come back. It's a joy. It's an experience. It's something that they learn and get excited by. Part of creating insanely great customers and creating the market strategies, engagement strategy, earn the relationship with them, really has to get down to a very emotional and visceral level. I want to just spend a few minutes on this. So the first question is, have you ever opened a door and found yourself in some place completely magical? Have you ever had the opportunity to hear someone speak who totally changed how you see and act in the world? Have you ever experienced something that transported you well beyond the boundaries of your own imagination? Those are all part of a customer journey. Those are all part of creating great value and differentiating value in ways that never happened before. And that's the kind of insanely great that we're talking about. The other question we always get, well, how important is the customer experience and other stuff to business customers? I understand that for business, B2C, and I kind of understand that for B2B, but how important is it really? So Dimensional Research just completed some research, not surprisingly, came out with what we all kind of know in our hearts, that people who have a good experience with us are likely to buy more, recommend our company, and will look and be open to buying other products and services from us. Those that have had a bad experience, the majority of those are going to stop buying, switch providers, and will also communicate to others not to buy products from us. Again, that translates down to real revenue. The next thing about creating insanely great customers is it really takes a team to do this. I'll take a quote here from Steve. Every good product I've ever seen is because a group of people cared really deeply about making something wonderful. That's the message here. It really, you really have to care deeply and have a team that cares deeply, particularly around business-to-business products, to create something uniquely valuable and different in the world. Insanely great, whether it's creating insanely great customers or creating insanely great products or creating an insanely great customer experience, really is a team sport that starts at the top of the company all the way down to IT guys, product people, the sales team, the marketing team, customer success team, and so on. All of those people have an amazing amount of insight and input that can go into doing this and have a lot to learn from going through the process of creating this. That said, team member number one has got to be customers. These are the folks that are going to tell us what's working for them, what's not, what's creating value for them, and what's not. And they're likely to have some really good insight, some good objective insight about what will create more value. They have to be a part of the conversations as you go about developing these strategies. The next step is harnessing this storm. So let's start with content. All of us are under the gun to produce more content, and we are. However, what we're hearing back as we get market research back in from customers is that much of the content that's being produced out there isn't creating any real incremental value for them. It's not being used. And so we're cluttering up the marketplace with a lot of things that really aren't making a difference, and it's burning a lot of time and burning a lot of money in the process. We need to change that. The way to do that is to start again with this immersive understanding of what creates value for customers, who's going to be involved in the business process and what their needs are going to be at each stage, and then develop a content and an experience architecture that is modularized in a way that allows us to get the right information to the right people at the right time through the right medium in a way that helps them accelerate their understanding. If you can do that and also make sure that that content strategy and that experience strategy is starting to set up that dialogue for innovation, that's how you can turn the content into something that really is making a difference for you and your customers. The next area is social media. A lot going on in social media, a lot of new tools, a lot of new capabilities that we never had at our disposal before, a lot of new data that we never had coming off of those. The key here is not just to figure out what we can do to get likes on Facebook, but figure out what we can do with that information and that insight that allows us to understand what's driving our customers' markets and what's changing their markets and what's changing the markets and driving the markets that they're trying to serve, and how can we pull that information, that insight, how can we facilitate some of that dialogue and engage in some of that dialogue so that we're creating meaning and value out there in ways we never have before. So really taking that social media spectrum and bringing that together in a powerful way that really facilitates that dialogue of engagement and innovation. Next is marketing technology. Every marketing person I've ever talked to is totally overwhelmed by all the options they have out there, and trying to sort their way through it is like trying to run through fog. All these things are exciting and important, and they're finding ways to create some unique value. Our advice to marketing teams and sales teams is let's stop a little bit and just ask ourselves some basic questions as we look at what we need from a technology standpoint. The first question is it something that's going to allow you to create unique and differentiating value for your customers? Secondly, will it allow you to measure that value that you're creating and give you the insight that it takes to fine-tune it as you go forward? The next question is that really going to help you and your team get things done better, faster, smarter, in a more effective way than you were able to before? And then lastly, is it something that allows you to facilitate and engage in those conversations and the dialogue of innovation? And if you're doing those things, then that's probably a good use that you can put this technology to. If you can't really answer those questions well, then you can probably wait for a little bit before you get to that technology. The next area, particularly for those on the product side of the fence, is the commercial consumerization. We all expect a lot more from our products, whether they're big pieces of agriculture, they're big enterprise ERP systems, or the things that sit on the surgical floor in hospitals. We really expect these tools and these systems to have far better user interface, far better customer service and support than they ever had before. We expect them to mimic the devices that we carry around with us, our mobile devices, mobile phones, iPads, whatever. And not only do we expect them to mimic those, we also expect to be able to engage and operate some of these things through those interfaces. So we really have to pay attention to that as we're moving forward, and we have to look out into the marketplace and say, what are our customers doing with this stuff? Because many of them are kind of building their own when they're not being provided by us. So we want to make sure that we're a part of those conversations and pacing those and contributing to those. The next area is platform innovations. Cloud-based computing is clearly one of these things where it's enabling us to build capabilities faster, less expensively, and more effectively than we ever had before. There's a whole world of networking and mobile that's changing dramatically. There's a whole bunch of APIs that are being developed that we can integrate with and tie into. There's a whole bunch of transactional software out there that's being created. And another really interesting area is the whole area of crowdsourced funding that starts to match up new ideas with money that can carry it someplace. As a company and organization, you really have to be asking yourself, not only we do this with this stuff, but how can we help our customers apply this stuff in ways they couldn't before? What we're really looking for is, do these things create the opportunity for us to pivot business models, to pivot the way we're configuring and bringing products to marketplace in ways that really start to create disruptive capability and disruptive value in the marketplace for our customers and for their customers and for us. Another area from a product standpoint and a go-to-market strategy standpoint, business standpoint, to really pay attention to. The next area is big data. This is an emerging field. There's a lot happening here. It's moving at a pace just like everything else. But for all of us, the question is, where do we get the information that's really going to help us? How do we pull all that information together and rationalize it so that it can deliver real meaning and real insight? How do we analyze that information in ways that helps us better understand how to create value for our customer and better see and be more predictive about what we need to be doing and what we can be doing for our customers in the future? And then how do we take that information and translate that into something that the rest of the organization can take meaningful action against? So challenges out there for all of us, but also huge opportunities. More food for thought around this. McKinsey just completed a study around customer journey, and one of the things they came back with was that 56% of all customer interactions happen during a multi-event, multi-channel customer journey. And in today's world, all of those points are places where we can gather information or data from and use data and information to improve. We're certainly champions of doing the work that it takes to learn and absorb and apply the concepts around big data and analytics. Additionally, when you lay those against the customer journey and you start to measure and monitor what's going on out here and then apply the insight that you've got, what it also helps you do is start to align, optimize, and personalize the customer value propositions you're providing out to the marketplace, the products, the message, the content, the pricing, channels of engagement, how to better direct the sales team so that they can engage customers more effectively, and where there's opportunities for innovation and investment that will move your value to the customer forward. Using data to analyze this stuff helps you identify very quickly, where your opportunities for investment are that are going to grow and make you money and create value for your customers, and where you're likely throwing money away because nobody cares and nobody's using it and it's not really creating any incremental value in the marketplace. Another area to kind of apply the world of big data and analytics against customer journey. Let's step into the world of innovation now. Bus Consulting Group holds an annual innovation survey of some of the top companies out there. Consistently, what they've come back with is that top innovators beat industry peers in terms of shareholders' returns again and again and again. The other discovery, those top innovators are people who involve customers early in concepting and exploring new product and services ideas. They're driving decisions not just with people's gut feels, but with data to help support why they're making the choices they are and why they're approaching things the way they are. They're also making investment not based on just historical data and input, but on really looking at what's trending out there, where future opportunities are forming, what the size of those are likely to be, and then they're placing their investments based on those. The other thing is that they really are recognizing that part of innovation is creating IP that can be monetized, both for them and for their customer. I want to underline this one. The other thing they discovered is these people are the ones who are best and fastest at putting the ideas that come back from the work they're doing around innovation into motion ahead of the rest of the marketplace. I had the opportunity to spend some time with some great folks over at SAP a couple of weeks ago. One of the case studies that we talked about was what they're doing with our local 49ers team here. 49ers are building a brand new stadium, and SAP has had a relationship with them around big data and analytics that they've been using to help improve how the team's performing, how they're recruiting, how they're managing their staff and other stuff. And now what's happened as a part of this new stadium coming to play is 49ers and SAP are collaborating to really innovate what's going to happen from a customer experience standpoint, both in the stadium and outside the stadium. They're really looking at what can we do with all these different technologies and platforms and data to really make this the most preeminent sports experience for customers ever. And so that's a work of collaborative innovation that's taking place between those, and kind of exemplifies the dialogue and discussion that we hope to see, because there are a number of other players involved in this as well, and they're working from a team perspective to really help the 49ers create something unique and different here. Another area that we see is an increasing number of innovation portals get stood up. This is GE's. They put $10 million out there and look at ways to create new innovative low-carbon solutions. And they're putting real money on the table and facilitating the dialogue to do that. The other thing that's starting to happen here as we start to bring social media and globalization and this drive for increasingly effective innovation is that the boundaries between the producers and the consumers of that innovation are blurring. A great example of this is a company based in Arizona called Local Motors. What they've got is they've built out a community of about 30,000 designers, engineers, fabricators, and enthusiasts, and they're using basically collaborative innovation and design approaches to build what they call inspired vehicle solutions. One of the things to pay attention to is look at the names at the bottom of that page. Those are big bore companies that are embracing this and putting money behind it and resources behind it, because They like what's happening in this collaborative innovation space. So, one of the projects they recently won was motorized bicycles or motorcycles. And I forget how many entries they had, but several hundred really unique and interesting design ideas. And then another one that they've done recently is sponsored by Domino's, which is help us, dear community, help us create the world's greatest pizza delivery vehicle. And so that's kind of been outsourced to the community to help innovate. We believe that we're going to see more and more of this, and this has kind of been going on in the world of open sourcing software for some time. But here's another area where that world of collaborative innovation is changing and accelerating the dialogue of innovation. To bring all this together, we believe you have to take this on an agile footing. If you're still skeptical about, is agile just something people are talking about, or is it really coming to life? Just about over a year ago, an organization was founded through the Meetup community around agile marketing here in the Bay Area. Today there are almost 960 members, and there are other groups like this around the world. This is happening, and we think it's something everyone really needs to pay attention to and get on the bus for. We think that while Agile has really started to work its way through the design and development teams and now into marketing, this is really something that the entire company is going to have to embrace to keep pace with what's happening in the marketplace, to keep pace with what's going on with their engineering and development teams. I think the entire company needs to get on an Agile footing. And that has to include their strategy and vision, embracing Agile in that, really a hyper focus on creating customer and delivering customer value, establishing a culture and a leadership team that supports all that, making sure their people and their organization are structured and skilled in those practices to be able to deliver against that, and make sure that the core processes within the business are agile themselves and support that kind of agile approach to life. And then lastly, make sure that the systems and tools and technologies that they're bringing to bear, whether it be product management systems or customer purchasing and support systems, or the data, the marketing tools, social media management tools, all of those need to support a very agile approach to bringing value to customers. Next step is the framework that needs to go into play. So all this stuff is nice, but we need, there's so much of it that we really need to have in place a framework that allows us to lay this stuff out, prioritize it, and figure out how it relates to each other, and then take action against it accordingly. Again, we think the customer journey is a great vehicle by which to do that. In the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of new vision, new experimentation, new technology come into play, and people scrambling to figure out what to do with it. This year, we're starting to see kind of the development of really good, strong next generation capabilities and practices around that. By 2015, we think those are going to be solidly in place. And so the encouragement is, dear marketers, you really need to step into this space and be involved in this now and start working through this now so that you don't get left behind as the market starts to really shape up around this and change the way they go to market and engage the market. What's really clear is, covered a lot of ground. You really cannot boil the ocean. I mean, that's not an option for most companies, just not enough resource out there. Again, another thought from Steve here is simple can be harder than complex. You have to work really hard to get your thinking clean and to make it simple. Once you get there, you can move mountains. And that's why, we're introducing this framework to people, because unless you understand that framework and the dynamics that are going on between it and the relationships between those things, you're just going to be playing with what some people call, marketing popcorn. We're doing this, and then we're doing this, and we're doing this. What we think this gives is a real structure and a focus that says, okay, now I know what I'm trying to do, and now I can start to establish my priorities based on that. Baseline requirements around this, we talked about some of these, looking at stage-by-stage engagement with customers, really making sure that you got a lot of very powerful customer insight going, really is reflective of what's happening in the marketplace today and tomorrow, and that you've got actionable personas in place that allow those who are engaged in delivering customer value to make decisions against and act against. Next is making sure that stage by stage, you understand what your business goals are and what your goals, what the business outcomes need to be for you and your customers, and you're measuring whether or not you're achieving those. Once that's in place, now you can have the conversation about what do we need to bring to bear in terms of content and experience architecture, and how do we deliver that to meet those specific needs of those personas at the different points in the customer journey. And then last is aligning processes and organizations and systems to really support the delivery, the management, and the the continual innovation and refinement of that as you go forward. Next is, we would strongly encourage you to begin the process, if you haven't already, of establishing a managed collaborative innovation process that's really focused on creating business value. But know that you're going to get different insight and engage in different dialogues as those prospects and customers move along that customer journey. So at the front end, you're likely to hear more about emerging concepts and business models and things that are disrupting the marketplace. Get a better understanding of what's really going to be relevance and value for the current market, while as in the latter part of the customer journey, you're going to hear more about how to refine, how to scale, what add-ons and mashups you could bring to the current offering that you have, and what might create some industry disruption there. And in the middle, you'll likely hear a lot about what you could be doing to innovate the customer experience in terms of engaging with those customers and onboarding them. So lots of opportunity to find innovative ways to better serve these customers and bring value to them. A quick way to kind of get a sense of where your priorities need to be is break this down and pull together a team within the company and have a conversation about how are we doing. So scale of -5 to +5. -5, we're likely losing some big opportunities because we don't have our act together here. 0 is we're doing okay, and +5 is we're really delivering something that's way ahead of the rest of the marketplace, and it's creating measurable, serious competitive advantage for us in the marketplace. Walk through this framework here and then start to establish some priorities of where you want to focus next. We encourage you to set priorities, again, based on customer value. So the first one is the value test. Is this really going to create incremental value for a lot of value for our most valuable customers? Is it going to bring serious advantage to our brand or reputation, and is it critical to the success of our business? The next test is that of urgency. Does this have to be done now? Are there other high priority items that can't be completed without this being done? And if this isn't completed now, are we going to lose the value we would have gained from having done this? Multiply those two together. When you're looking at things that come up with 20s and 25s, those are your priorities. And the rest you kind of push down deck and say, we'll get to those next. Then you get these completed, get the first priorities completed, and then measure whether or not you created the value you thought you were going to create through them, and then have the conversation about what did we learn and how should we refine our overall vision and how should we refine our next set of priorities. Basically, that's really advocating an agile approach where we're really working in rapid time-bound sprints. So I won't go into detail on this. A lot more information around the world on agile, but those are kind of the basics. The other thing to know is that this is really a commitment. So it means committing to defining and maturing the processes, the people, and the systems that produce customer value, that enable you to bring innovative offerings to your customers and provide your business the agility that it needs to stay ahead of this very fast-paced marketplace. The other thing we encourage you to do here is to pay it forward. And by that, what we mean is take the news of this, take the information about this, and get it out to your customers. It's going to help you drive more growth and profits. It's going to help them increase the effectiveness and the value they deliver to their customers, and it will help. The result of that is you're starting to build and grow an overall economy. We've introduced a framework. We've talked about how it's important to build relationships with insanely great customers based on mutual continual learning and innovation. We've talked through the steps that it takes to do that. There will be some resources available. We'll talk about those in the email. And also know that we provide some workshops around this, and we'd love to talk with you about those. A quick reminder that this is a series, an ongoing series. Here's a list of some of the things that we're going to be discussing in the series going forward. Upcoming webinars, 2 really great speakers. R.N. Prasad from Confluence Consulting, one of our alliance partners. I don't know if you guys are familiar with TED or not, but it's basically where the best and the brightest get invited to speak, and RN brings a lot of insight about the future of customer insights and data analysis. So great presenter, great mind, really someone that I think you'll get a lot of value out of. And then the next up will be Michael Gosby, another one of our alliance partners. Michael is the author of Marketing High Ground, which has become somewhat of a Bible for business-to-business marketing people, a great speaker. And he's going to really zero in on the positioning statement and really sees that as a secret sauce for creating really effective effective marketing efforts and marketing programs. So that information is available at the landing page here on those webinars, and encourage you to get there and sign up for those. I want to express our thanks. We're really glad to have you and really look forward to your input on this. And let's go get this done. Thank you very much.